Welcome back into the South Jersey Sports Report here on 97.3 ESPN. Your host, Sully from Glory Days Magazine. Check us out, glorydaysonline.com, facebook.com/AC Glory Days. You can also follow me on Twitter at GD Sully Says. In studio here with Nick Costco, co-host and producer, pushing all the buttons, keeping us going. And right now, it's never too early to talk high school football, Nick. Even though it's only June, we're going to be turning the page to the high school football season very quickly, as all the teams are going to be getting started this month with practice. And officially, I guess first week of August, they'll start practice.
It's our last show, too, so I think we need to get into some football before we take our little summer hiatus.
Yeah, we're going to, if you haven't heard, we're going to take a little bit of break here in the summertime and come back with more South Jersey Sports Report late August, early September, get you set up for high school football. And to that end, we got a special guest with us today, Mike Pavlichko, hopefully I said that right, Pavlichko, of WCTC 1450 Radio in New Brunswick. He's been covering high school football for 20 years in the North Jersey area. And the reason we brought Mike on is to kind of give our listening audience a little bit of insight into the high school football playoff situation. We had, if you remember last year, all that craziness with the Bourne Power Index and how to figure all that out. So, Mike, give us some insight. Give us a quick background on yourself and why you can speak to this.
Well, 20 years, I mean, that just sounds scary when you say it. Sounds more scary when you say it than I say it. But thanks for having me. Yeah, it's like I said, I've been doing this a long time and seen all different iterations of PowerPoints. I can remember when they were very simple. Just added it up each week. And it seems to get more and more complicated every year. So, earlier this month, the NJSIAA finally passed the changes for this year. You can have changes every year. Bourne Power Index, listen, I think it was a great system for determining the strength of teams. I think if you look around, whatever wins and losses were, you all saw it with was it Cherokee? Was the 2-6? What was the
Shawnee?
2-6? Shawnee.
Yeah.
The Shawnee 2-6 and wins a sectional title.
Well, I guess the premise behind the Bourne Power Index was to try to incorporate a strength of schedule, which is difficult in high school football because the teams are so different from year to year.
Right. Exactly.
But I don't know if it really did it do what it was trying to accomplish.
Well, I mean, on its own, it's a good indicator of strength. I mean, Shawnee was a strong team, and I in seeing them make the playoffs to begin with, and reading about them to go, who are these guys? I mean, I saw lots of South Jersey coaches in that section saying, "Hey, don't sleep on them; they could still win this thing."
Right,
and they did. The thing was that the people who brought in the Bourne Power Index to use, they didn't really use it the right way.
Okay.
It's good. I mean, you could have a good rating and not have a good win-loss record. It might be a tough out. So I think that was the thing. That's what the Bourne Power Index was simply meant to be a predictor, maybe, of results. When you look at his ratings, who's got a higher rating, who's got a lower rating. It's really all it was meant for. It wasn't really a good way to seed the playoffs. And as it turned out, with all the calculations, teams that won by more got better rankings, which then led to better seeds in the playoffs.
Well, did the NJSIA use solely the Bourne Index to figure out the playoff seedings?
No. So last year, what they did was they took they did the super sections, the 16 teams, 32 teams, took the top 16 in the South and top 16 in the North.
Right. Okay.
And they seeded them all. So what they did was the UPR, the United Power Ranking, was 40% Power Points, 60% Bourne Power Index. So what they did was they ranked the teams 1 through 32 and give you a value, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And they ranked the PowerPoint teams by PowerPoints, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then they took 40% of PowerPoints and 60% of the others. So if you're 1 in both, you're going to get a 0.4 for PowerPoints and a 0.6 for Bourne. And your UPR would be a 1, and the lower number, the better. The higher you would be seated. So it
sounds like a lot of confusing math.
It is a lot.
It is a lot
of confusing math. But the bottom line was there were teams were being rewarded for scoring more points because the more you beat an opponent by, the higher your rating went up. the higher you'd be in the standings in at least the Bourne, not the PowerPoints. So the New Jersey Football Coaches Association met shortly after the season. In their December meeting, they came out with 3 key points that they wanted to address this year. One, they wanted transparency because nobody knew how the Bourne Power Index worked. I will tell you that I have seen the formula. I will tell you that when Bourne said there's no spreads involved, that is correct. He doesn't actually use that. I was able to figure out how to get the same number he got, but in a different way. For example, if I say...
You should have seen this guy's Excel sheets last
Well,
year.
Nick, if I say to you, what's 5 times 2?
10.
Minus 2?
8.
What's 4 plus 4?
8.
Very good. Just one of you is Bourne and one of you is Pavlichko, what I got.
Look at
So
that.
but we
I was a
both
journalism
got 8.
major. How about that? I still got
But we
my math
both
right.
got 8, and that was the thing.
2
So-
journalism majors passing the math test early in the morning here.
Bingo. So, but the thing was, nobody knew what Bourne was until I kind of figured it out, just
Right.
plugged the numbers in Excel.
Well, even the
and went, hey,
coaches
here you
didn't
go.
know. I mean, you were
coaches didn't know.
into the second week of October, and there were coaches that were saying, "I don't know if we have to tell our kids we have to win every game because we
Right.
just don't know if we're going to make the playoffs."
And Mike, you could speak to this too, as we talked about this a lot last year. So I guess kind of the last thing on the Bourne Index was that now it's kind of going, it's away now, but it encouraged blowouts last year.
It did.
And sometimes coaches, I would say, week 6, 7, or 8, they're like, all right, we're 6-0 or 6 and whatever the record is. We don't know if we're getting the playoffs, so we kind of have to tell our kids, we have to beat this 1-5 team by 30 tonight. We can't call the dogs off after a 21-point rule. Like, we have to beat them by 30, 40 points in order to ensure we have a decent seed in the playoffs.
Now, eventually, he capped that at 35,
Right.
which is the blowout rule by the NJSA. But here's the thing. I'll give you 2 examples of things that happened last year. One was quite overt. It was North Brunswick, who was playing East Brunswick, and East Brunswick's not that good, and North Brunswick was pretty darn good for the first time in a while. And North Brunswick's winning by 28 with 4 minutes to go, and they throw, and they get a touchdown. And the other coach was ticked off.
Right.
And he said, well, we haven't had a playoff home game in 10 years, and we need to win by more to have a shot at getting one.
Okay.
So that's what he did. The more covert one is this. One team winning by 21 late in the game. Defense, other team gets in the red zone, brings the starters back out. Now, that's not going to show in the box score, but he's not piling on, but he doesn't want to win by 14.
Mm-hmm.
Trying to hold on
Right.
to that 21. So how's that good for the game? Because
It's a little bit akin to the high school baseball with the mercy rule, because a lot of times you'll see a team that's winning 9-0 in the 5th inning,
Right.
and they're playing the game like a one-run game.
Yeah.
Because if they do score that 1 run, the game's over in 5. They save pitch counts.
Right.
That pitcher might be able to go in
Right.
3 more days instead of 5. So a little bit like that with where you're trying to do something that normally is kind of taboo in the game, I guess, when you're trying to win by that many points.
Yeah. So here are the 3. So the one was transparency. So what they decided to do was they decided to use a formula similar to what I and a couple of others had come up with, which was our version of how we got to Bourne's number. So it's very similar in that regard. So they solved the transparency issue. So now that it's all spelled out in the regulations, which are published and they're out there. 2 was no spreads. It's a little misleading because for Bourne, the spread was, hey, if one team's in 90, one team's in 80, the spread is 10, and you're expected to win by 10. If you won by more than 10, you went up. If you won by less than 10 or lost, you went down. And if you won by 10, nothing happened to your rating. They're keeping that, but I'll get back to that in a second. The other was they wanted to rely less on historical data, which was Bourne used the number from the end of the previous season to start the next season. What he did during the year was he made the games in the beginning of the year more valuable with one version of his formula and then changed to a different version later so that it would kind of be representative of the current year. Now, I've had coaches who say, well, last year has no bearing on this year. But that's not really true. Because how many teams bring back? Well, they bring back 5 starters, both sides of the ball, and they bring back a bunch of backups. And
Right.
the coach is back. It's still, part of last year's team. But here's the other reason you can't, because I've had coaches go, why can't you just start everybody at 0? or some other number. And here's why. If you have a middling team that beats the heck out of a really bad team in week 1, and you both start at 0, then you have 2 really good teams, and one of them won by a field goal. Now, in that middling team, whose number is way high because they played someone weak, is a favorite over the 2 elite teams that played each other to 3. And that's so mathematically, you just can't. You have to have something. So what they compromised on, they said, we're going to keep the formula the same throughout the year, but we're going to bring everybody's number closer to a center point. And what they chose was 60. And you would go down by a third of the difference to 60. So if you're a 90, the midpoint is 60, a third of 30, which is the difference, you're going to go down by 10, so you'll be an 80. If you're a 63, you're going to become a 62.
And just to clarify for the audience, that's to start the season.
That's to start the season. So that is now your adjustment. And then the rest of the season, your strength index number is going to go up or down depending on how you do against the, used to be called the spread, now they're calling it the expected result. But
that's a nice twist on words.
That's a really PC one.
Just trying to make it a little softer there.
But here's the big difference. Even though that's still there, last year you were scored based on your rating. That's how you were seeded. Now what they're going to do is they're going to take the ratings of all your opponents and average them out. And not only that, but whatever your opponent's value is, you're going to get the full amount of points if you win and half the amount of points if you lose. So I'm going to play 2 teams that are 80. I split with them. I'm going to get 80 and 40 for them, and I'm going to average them out. That's going to be a 60. So now that's my strength index is a number, but it has no bearing on me, only on the teams that play me. What you're grading me on is my opponent strength index. So for that it would be a
So it's
be a
more
60.
of a true strength of schedule.
Right. So what'll happen is now, let's say I'm 90, you're 80. I'm expected to beat you by 10. If I beat you by 10, the numbers stay the same. If I beat you by 20, the difference is going to be 1/5. So if I beat you by 5 over the expected result, beat you by 15, I'm a 91 now, you're a 79. If I beat you by 20, I beat the expected result by 10, I'm going to be a 92, you're going to be a 78. See what's happening to your number? It's going down.
Right.
The more I beat you, the more your number goes down. The less points I'm going to get. Now I'm only going to get a 78. If I go and beat you by 40, I've knocked you down to a 76. I'm only going to get 76 points. I don't want to beat you by 30. I'd rather beat you by 20 or 10.
Okay.
So the spread is kind of still there, called something different, but now they've flipped it and done it the reverse way, so that the sportsmanship is back in.
But is that necessarily? I mean, so the sportsmanship is back, which is good. But is it necessarily good to? So I know there's a lot of math, and people early on a Saturday morning are not going to be like, what the heck's going on? But is it necessarily good? So you just mentioned, if a team rated a 90 beats a team rated an 80, and they beat them by more than 10, all of a sudden, or say if they beat them by 20. Their number's still going to go up, but the other team's number's going to go down. Is that a bad thing for the winning team to win by 20, or would you rather see the team win by 10?
But you know what? Who's going to try and win by 10?
In
football, I think it's a very different, it's different than other sports. I think it's different than basketball. In basketball, if you're winning by 30 points, you can call off the dogs and comfortably win by 15.
So basically this new system doesn't knock somebody down for, if say they're up by 20 with 7 minutes to go, just running the ball and kind of taking the clock down.
Exactly.
Yeah. So that's probably the biggest thing.
Urge you to do that.
So last year with the Bourne Index, if you're up by 21 and you're expected to win by 28, but you at that point you're up by 21 with 3 minutes to go in the game.
Right.
Last year teams would try to score one more touchdown.
In fact, now you get more points if you just sit on the ball.
Yeah. So
I think that
I kind of understand now. Dave, you should have seen when he was explaining it to me over the phone yesterday. When I was trying to prep myself, and I was like, I have no idea. I need to see you and hear this from you in person or fully understand. Regardless, Mike, it's still a lot of math, but
it's still a lot of math.
But it's transparent now. The public knows about it, and it seems like it's better for the game. this year at least, because it doesn't encourage those blowouts and those extra touchdowns at the end where against teams that are, they're like, okay, we're out of it. There's 3 minutes to go. Why are you still trying to pile it on?
But I'm going to make this interesting point. I think it's interesting. I am not a fan of the 2-6 teams being in the playoffs.
Me neither. And
I think
we discussed, Dave and I even discussed this last year, where I think you might have noticed this too as well. Last year, I know Shawnee was 2-6, but they ended up going to the sectional final anyway, which is good for them. But we still, at least I still didn't think they should have been in at a 2-6 record. Plus, I think what was it? Dell ran last year was 7-1.
Dell ran was 7-1, and
they missed the playoffs.
In, but there was nobody in that section with less than 5 wins.
Right. But they still missed. So it's a little bit more understandable. But a 7-1 team, you think should make the playoffs.
In North 5. Westfield got in at 2-6. Bridgewater got in at 2-6. Bridgewater, their coach and their AD and a writer from the Courier News up in Bridgewater called me from the AD's house that Saturday morning at cutoff. They go, because I had tweeted it. I said they're going to be in the playoffs. He's like, because they beat Union, which was like 7-1 on that cutoff weekend, and that was their second win, and that was a big win. It was a good. Westfield didn't have a win like that, and they were like almost embarrassed that they got in. They're like, please tell us we're not in the playoffs. I'm like, no, you're in. You're in. But here's the interesting point. I don't think those teams belong in the playoffs, but there's a possibility they could get in.
Still this year with the new system.
Because now I've wanted to run like a whole section of numbers.
Run a simulation for the year.
To see what happened. And here's what happened. Even in the beginning of the year when you change it, because this year they're going to start with Bourne's number and then reduce it. So I had teams who would be reduced by like 12 points, but you can't simulate a whole section because you've got to do everybody's opponents and then all your opponents' opponents, and you'll get to wind up doing the whole state. I don't have time for that. So what I did was I took 2 divisions, and I did just the divisional games. So at least I had an even number of games. They all played each other, and nobody outlandish. Through 5 games, I found that the OSI numbers they got closer and closer to Bourne as where I calculated what Bourne's would have been, and then I calculated what the OSI would have been, and they got closer and closer to Bourne. So the formula's pretty similar, and even though they're using it in the reverse way, I still think that you're gonna get some
below 500, sub 500
teams because like those 2-6 teams played really elite. Like Shawnee played really good. They played Union City, which was a finalist, and then they played like 2 or 3 state champs, one finalist, and St. Augustine.
Yeah, and we discussed it every Friday night, every Saturday morning back in the football season. David, I would say, Shawnee they're still in the playoff race because I was using, based on what we had on the Gridiron website, based on what you have told me from last year, and I would talk with Dave last year and saying, this team can still make the playoffs just because they're playing an elite schedule.
Right. So, think about this. If you play a team that's 90 and you're going to get 45 for losing to them, if you play a 45 and you beat them, you're going to get 45. So, losing to a 90 is just as good as beating. So, they lost to a bunch of those, like St. Augustine's probably close to 100 even was in the Bourne. They're all up there, 80s, 90s, 100. So, you still could get that. Now, I think there's not a lot of support among coaches for getting rid of these 2-6 teams. A lot of these coaches feel like,
if we get in, we can do something with it.
If we're good enough, we'll win it. The good teams will win it. But so I don't think there's enough taste for doing that. I think among us there is.
Yeah.
But I don't think they want to get rid of that. But I think you could still see that this year. So we'll see.
If you're just joining us, we're talking with Mike Pavlichko from WCTC Radio 1450 in New Brunswick, 20 years in the business covering high school football, trying to make some sense of how we're getting to these playoff teams here in the new era of the Bourne Index and what's coming down the line next year. And, Mike, to kind of recap for the fans listening out there, how is next year or this coming fall going to be different from 2018?
I think the main way it's going to be different is that you are not going to have teams rewarded for scoring more points, winning by larger margins. I think you're going to get some similar results because you still have multipliers expanded throughout the state. You have these A, B, and C teams now. It's not just those North Jersey Don Boscos and all those teams anymore. I think you're still going to see sub 500 teams getting in.
What about some of these teams that play the really good North Jersey teams just to get the points, even though they pretty much know they have no shot at winning?
I mean, that's still out there.
So they can still schedule a St. Peter's or a Don Bosco.
The only thing that a couple of small things they added in, nobody at 0-8 can make the playoffs.
Okay, that's good.
Nobody at 8-0 can miss the playoffs.
Okay.
All right.
The other big one is that they're snaking the brackets this year. So last year they took the top 16 in the South, which would have been South and Central Group 5.
Right.
They took instead of the top 8 in Central and top 8 in South, they take the top 16 of those.
Right, and just to recap, just to remind people, so they split up all the groups, but they combined. They made them super sections, but there was still North 1, North 2, Central, and South, and they had a geographic number for all the teams. So if you're in that top 16, I mean, hypothetically, you could have, let's say, all 8 teams in South Group 5, and then Central Group 5, depending upon how the standings worked, you could have 5 Central teams and still 3 South Jersey teams go up and play in Central Jersey.
Right. What they're doing this year is they're snaking it. So think NCAA tournament.
Okay.
The top the 4 number 1 seeds are the top 4 seeds. The 4 number 2 seeds are teams 5, 6, 7, and 8.
Oh, okay.
That's what they're going to do this year. So on one side of the bracket, so you're going to have 1, then 2 and 3, then 4 and 5, then 6 and 7,
now,
8 and 9.
Will that affect the geographic proportions of the bracket? So say if
teams might have to drive a little further for a first-round game?
Yes. So you're going to have – and what they're going to do is –
so you might actually have a mix of 4 and 4, like say 4 –
You could absolutely have a mix-up. It just depends on how they are –
So you could have a team, say, from – Atlantic or Cape May County having to go to Allentown.
Well, the thing was last year, and I think it was the case in North in Group 5. You could have had of the top 16 teams, you could have the top 3 all in one bracket.
I see.
If they just sorted that way by geographic, so
I see
that
what
way
you're saying.
in that way, like North 1 would have.
It'd be like in the NCAA is having
number 1.
all 4 top seeds in one region.
Right, exactly.
Okay. All right,
so this way is
I guess that makes.
different.
I mean, I guess geographically it's going to be a pains possibly, but I think for the best team purposes, it's probably best to.
So one bracket is going to be 1, 4, 5, 8, 9, 12, 13, and 16.
Oh, I got it. Okay.
The other one's going to be 2, 3, 6, 7, 10, 11, 14, 15.
Right.
All right.
They are going the overall number 1 out of the 16 is going to be in their natural section.
Okay.
So whoever if the number 1 overall is Williamstown,
they'll play South Group 5.
They'll go in South and then they'll snake it from there.
Okay.
If the overall number 1 was Sayreville,
they'll go Central Group 5.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
So now if you have another 5 here, let's say the number 2 overall was we say Williamstown, the other one, who would the other like Egg Harbor or something, right? So now you could have Williamstown as the 1 seed in one and Egg Harbor as the 1 seed in the other bracket.
That's interesting. Okay. All right. How about
so they
that?
would not face each other until the bowl game.
Wow.
So you could have some interesting.
We gonna fast forward right to football, Dave? I think we.
I'm ready, man. I'm ready.
You could have some really interesting scenarios there, and you could have a team like in Central coming down to play the.
Is this a precursor to trying to get to an overall state champion? The way that
I think so.
They had the bowl games.
That's what the bowl games were. There are,
but with this layout, with the snake movement and trying to get the better teams
there are
opposite each
factions
other.
of coaches who want to take the top 32 and
Just
make it that way. Just overall, the entire section, entire group in the state. Take all of Group 5 and just take the top 32 teams.
I don't think that makes a lot of sense because you'll end up having a South Jersey team have to drive an hour and a half.
But they want the best. They want the best 32 Group 5 teams.
Yeah, I mean, can you imagine? Like Dave knows this. I mean, can you imagine like Ocean City driving all the way up to Bergen County to play somebody or so?
Yeah, you'd have no fans going up there.
Yeah.
So geographically, I mean, I like.
It's hard to get around Middlesex County at rush hours.
Don't I know? That makes sense from a football standpoint, but I guess geographically, it does not.
Too hard a state.
Yeah. So
to do that
unfortunately,
it looks small, but
at least the bowl games, like Dave just said, I think that could be a precursor to the overall state champion in that group, and I do like that.
I think they're going to get there. They technically have to
Probably by the 2020 season, though. They were aiming for.
Well, they have to amend their constitution because the NJSA's constitution says that football cannot play to group champ. That's a group champions.
Right.
Now they got to fix that.
Some will tell you that they're already violating that because really, don't they do that in non-public?
I would think so, but there's only one non-public champion in each section,
right?
So I think they're kind of already.
So some say they're already.
But then again,
that.
I tell you this all the time: they're private schools that can do whatever they want.
The problem is adding the extra week of the season. Are all your Thanksgiving games away? Gone?
No, some have gone away. Some remain.
Some still have. But all the Middlesex County games.
A majority of ours are still around because. They just are. I like the tradition of it.
I do too.
But it was.
They're all gonna.
It was a whole big thing, and not to start another 30-minute topic, but it was a whole. It was a whole big thing last year. Around this area, there was a big debate in our local press. 1 for, 1 against keeping the games.
Well, I had one coach. Who asked me. He's like, "Listen, I got a Thanksgiving game. I want to move it. Isn't it better for me to move and get my 8th game?" I said, "Depends. If you win your 8th game before the cutoff, sure.
Okay, right.
If you lose it, maybe not."
Right.
Because now what they're doing is they're averaging.
Right, and the argument was to move those rivalry games on Thanksgiving to the first week of the season, kind of do like a kickoff thing.
That's what they've done near us.
I like the idea of it. So if you're going to do it that way, it's a way to preserve it.
I love the idea of local rivalry Labor Day weekend. You almost make it into a block party that whole weekend.
But the reason a lot of them got rid of it now was because they. To get the bowl games in, they moved the season a week earlier, and there was just too much distance between the last game and your consolation game and Thanksgiving. It's like, try keeping these kids around for 2.5 more weeks to just play on Thanksgiving. Yeah. And, of course, you got Easton Peaburg, which is the one game that's never going to go away, so you've always got to accommodate them. Yeah. So then, to be fair, you got to accommodate everybody else.
Mike, real quick before we let you go, are people going to know what's happening next fall with the playoff situation?
Or
will they have to really be in tune to Twitter?
Depends how good they are at math. That's the big thing.
I think we should just
because it's public.
Yeah.
The question is,
are we going to know from a week-to-week basis who's in what kind of place?
They're going to update this starting week 2.
Okay.
It'll be on Gridiron.
It'll be on Gridiron. Yeah. And the numbers you get for your opponents are going to be the numbers they have at the end of the year, so everybody gets the same number. If I beat you and I get 80 and he beats you and later you're a 76, people say, well, that's not fair. I kind of think it is, but that's another story.
Plug your Twitter real quick. If people follow you,
Mike
they'll know what's going on.
Pavlichko, good luck spelling it. MikePavlichko, but just look it up and you'll see me tweeting. WCTCAM.com too. I tweet put all my stuff on there.
There we
go.
Take
a look at the little blog. And
transparency, I love it.
I did a whole thing the other day on here's how a season would work in the GMC Red Division. So
you have too much free time, Mike.
I wouldn't say that.
I don't know.
Or you just one of those guys that can't sleep at night and you're crunching numbers at 3 in the morning.
Growing as we speak. But thanks, guys, for having me. I really appreciate it.
Appreciate coming down, Mike.
Love to come back anytime.
Absolutely.
That's Mike Pavlichko from WCTC Radio 1450 in New Brunswick, helping us break down high school football playoffs and all the crazy systems that go into figure out who's going to make the playoffs each year. So we'll dive more into that in the fall when we get back into high school football season. Keep it locked here on 97.3 ESPN. We're coming right back.